When Caroline first mentioned the gym, I didn't think much of it. We were both in our mid-30s, parents to two children who had a way of draining every ounce of energy out of us. If she wanted to start working out, to reclaim a sense of control over her body and health, I could only support that. At least, that's what I told myself. She framed it casually over breakfast one Saturday morning. "They're running a membership deal," she said, her fork pushing scrambled eggs across her plate. I figured I'd give it a try, for my health. The way she emphasized that last part stuck with me. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to register in the back of my mind. I kissed her cheek, told her I was proud of her, and thought nothing more of it. But then came the first ripple. The following Wednesday, I stopped by the very gym she claimed to be joining. It wasn't intentional. My office had relocated temporarily while our building underwent renovations, and the new commute took me past the sprawling complex she'd named. Rows of treadmills lined the front glass windows, their blinking screens glowing like tiny lighthouses. I slowed at the red light and glanced inside, half expecting to see her ponytail bouncing in rhythm on an elliptical. But she wasn't there. I shrugged it off. Maybe she'd gone earlier. Maybe she had chosen a yoga class tucked away in the back studio. But when it happened again the next week, and the week after that, I began to notice the absence more than the possibility. It wasn't that I saw her working out less. It was that I never saw her there at all. At first, I dismissed the unease that coiled inside me. It was too easy to chalk it up to paranoia. Yet little details began piling up like bricks, forming a wall I couldn't climb over. Her gym bag, for one, always neatly packed and slung over her shoulder when she kissed me goodbye in the mornings. But the bag itself never seemed to lose its pristine condition. The towel folded inside remained suspiciously fresh. Her sneakers never bore the faint rubbery smell of sweat and effort. I'd know, my own workouts always left my shoes betraying me for days. Then came her energy. Caroline would return in the evenings, hair perfectly arranged, skin glowing, but not in the way of someone who'd spent an hour drenched in exertion. It was a different glow, polished, deliberate. Her perfume lingered, stronger than it ever did when she returned from errands or the office. And her eyes darted away from mine more often, just for a second, just enough to sting. I tried to shake it off. A husband second-guessing his wife's story about the gym? It sounded absurd, petty even. Yet each night as she curled into bed beside me, her breathing steady and calm, I felt an unease prick at me, as though some invisible thread was pulling taut across our marriage. The turning point came one rainy Thursday evening. I left the office later than usual, the storm slowing traffic to a crawl. As I passed the gym's glowing sign, instinct tugged at me, urging me to turn in. I told myself it was curiosity, nothing more. I parked, stepped inside, and was hit by the familiar tang of chlorine from the pool and the sterile sweetness of disinfectant sprayed across machines. I scanned the treadmills, the weight racks, the mirrored walls of the spin class studio. My heart pounded as if I were the one on the bike. No Caroline. I approached the front desk, palms sweating, and asked, "Excuse me, could you check if my wife's here?" Caroline Morris. She just joined recently. The receptionist, a college kid with a headset looped around his ears, tapped at the keyboard. He frowned. "Sorry, sir. I don't see her checked in today." I forced a smile, thanked him, and left. But as I stood outside beneath the drizzle, staring at the neon glow of the sign, I realized my doubts were no longer shadows. They had teeth. That night, she slipped under the covers beside me as if nothing were amiss. "Great class tonight," she murmured, rolling to face the wall. I stared at the ceiling in silence, every nerve in my body buzzing with the lie. From that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It wasn't even sadness. It was calculation. The kind of quiet focus I'd once used when mapping out complex projects at work, aligning every detail until the truth revealed itself. If Caroline was lying about the gym, then where was she going? And more importantly, who was she with? The next morning, as she packed her bag, humming softly to herself, I studied her with new eyes. Every motion, every glance, every detail became a clue. I knew I needed to tread carefully. Confronting her now would give her the chance to cover her tracks. I had to be patient, deliberate, ruthless in my gathering of proof. And so began the surveillance. I started small. When she left for her so-called workouts, I noted the times. Her departures grew strangely consistent, always on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, around 6 in the evening. She would return 2 hours later, not a strand of hair out of place. I checked the mileage on her car. At first, nothing unusual, until I noticed the discrepancy. The gym was 3 miles away, yet she clocked nearly 20 per trip. A small detail, but damning all the same. By the second week, I purchased a discreet tracking device. Small enough to slip beneath her back seat, invisible to the casual glance. When I set it up, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sickening thrill of finally gaining access to the truth. The first ping confirmed what I already suspected. She wasn't going to the gym. She drove past it every single time, further into town, veering toward neighborhoods we never frequented. Each night, I watched the small blinking dot on my phone's screen, my stomach twisting as she lingered at the same address for hours. A single-family home on a quiet cul-de-sac. I didn't know who lived there. I didn't know what went on behind its shuttered windows. But I knew this: my wife wasn't sweating on a treadmill. And as I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing map, one chilling realization hit me harder than any storm outside. Caroline's new gym membership wasn't about her health at all. It was about her lies. And I was about to uncover just how deep they went. The next day, I could hardly focus at work. My spreadsheets blurred, numbers slipping through my concentration like water through fingers. The only number I cared about was the address where Caroline parked her car every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening. I told myself a dozen times to wait, to keep tracking, to gather more data before I acted. But patience wore thin when betrayal breathed down my neck. By late afternoon, my decision was made. Tonight, I would follow her. I left the office early, heart pounding with every tick of the clock. At home, I played the role of dutiful husband, helping the kids with homework, serving them dinner, and listening to Caroline rattle off a story about her new trainer with a smile that seemed just a little too practiced. At 6:15, she slipped on her sneakers and tossed her bag over her shoulder. "Don't wait up," she said lightly. "It's a tough class tonight." I kissed her cheek, and my lips almost burned from the falseness of it. As soon as the door clicked shut, I grabbed my jacket and keys. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then pulled out of the driveway, headlights off until I was a block away. My pulse drummed in my ears as I tailed her through the winding suburban streets. She didn't notice me. Her car moved with the certainty of routine, as if her tires knew every curve by memory. Past the glowing gym sign, past the shopping center, deeper into a quiet neighborhood where porch lights flickered on like fireflies against the dusk. She slowed, signaling, then turned into the same cul-de-sac I had seen on my tracker. I killed my headlights and parked a short distance back, partially hidden beneath a shadowy oak. Her car rolled up to a modest 2-story house. White siding, shutters painted a fading navy blue, a front porch light casting a golden pool over the driveway. She parked neatly, cut the engine, and stepped out. There was no hesitation in her stride, no glance over her shoulder, no nervous fidget. She walked as though she belonged there. And then the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his figure blurred by the porch light. He didn't linger at the threshold. He came down the steps to meet her halfway. And then, before my disbelieving eyes, Caroline slid into his arms. It wasn't a friendly embrace. It wasn't the polite hug of coworkers or neighbors. It was intimate, practiced, almost magnetic. His hand pressed against the small of her back. Hers lingered along his shoulder. Their mouths met, slow and certain. The world tilted. I sat in the shadows, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. The engine hummed beneath me, the only sound competing with the blood roaring in my ears. I thought I would feel rage, a desire to storm out of the car and rip them apart. Instead, what washed over me first was disbelief. After more than a decade together, after children and vows and late nights, when she whispered she could never live without me. This? She pulled back, laughing softly, her face tilted up to his like he was the sun. Then they walked inside together, closing the door behind them. I stayed parked there for nearly an hour, staring at the darkened house. Every instinct urged me to barge in, to demand explanations, to unleash the fury boiling in my gut. But another voice, the quieter, colder one, held me back. Not yet. Not like this. Instead, I turned the key and drove away, the road ahead blurred by tears I refused to let fall. Back home, the house was silent. The kids were asleep, their small breaths drifting through their doors as I checked on them. Their innocence made my chest ache. How could I shatter their world with the truth when mine was already crumbling? I retreated to the study, laptop glowing against the dark. I pulled up the tracker again, watching the blinking dot that represented Caroline. Still at that house. Still with him. I began digging. Property records, Google searches, social media. After an hour of scouring, I had a name, David Reynolds. Divorced, mid-40s, owner of a contracting business on the other side of town. His Facebook profile was sparse, but there were a few smiling photos. Him with coworkers, him holding a beer at a barbecue. No women. No signs of children. Just a man who, apparently, now had my wife. The knowledge sat heavy in my chest. It wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't suspicion. It was real. Tangible. She wasn't just skipping workouts. She was meeting David Reynolds. By the time Caroline returned, slipping quietly into the house around 9 p.m., I had already composed myself. She smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, her hair damp from a shower she must have taken at his place. She kissed me on the cheek again, murmured something about an intense class, and padded upstairs. I followed later, sliding into bed beside her as though nothing were amiss. Her breathing deepened quickly, sleep claiming her without struggle. I lay awake, staring into the darkness, thoughts clawing at me. I needed more than a name, more than a kiss on a driveway. I needed evidence, so undeniable it would crush every lie she dared to spin. So the next day, I made arrangements. I ordered hidden cameras, small enough to disappear into corners, a voice-activated recorder for her car, even a cloning tool for her phone. Each package promised discreet shipping, no questions asked. My hands shook as I entered my credit card information, but the tremor wasn't fear, it was anticipation. At work, I pretended to be normal, though my mind was elsewhere. At home, I wore the mask of an affectionate husband, though my heart beat with cold calculation. Caroline didn't suspect a thing. A week later, the first packages arrived. That evening, while she showered, I planted one of the cameras in the living room, tucked neatly among the books on a shelf. Another went in the bedroom, angled carefully to capture the bed. The third I saved for the bathroom, where I suspected she might keep things hidden. When she left for her class, the next night, I slipped into her car and attached the recorder beneath the driver's seat. My chest hammered as I worked, terrified she might double back and catch me. But she didn't. By the time she returned, I was calmly seated on the couch, flipping through a magazine. The next morning, after she dropped the kids at school, I retrieved the recorder and cameras, loading the data onto my laptop. Hours of silence, normal household noises, and then, just before 9 p.m., the living room camera caught her sneaking inside with her gym bag. She placed it down, unzipped it, and pulled out something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't gym clothes. It was a small box of lingerie, delicate and unfamiliar, items I'd never seen her wear for me. She tucked them quickly into the back of a drawer, then left the frame. The recorder in her car was worse. A man's voice, deep, husky, unmistakably his, filled the file. "Can't wait to see you again," he murmured. Caroline's laugh followed, warm and intimate, the sound I once thought belonged only to me. I sat frozen, headphones digging into my ears, listening to my wife whisper promises to another man inside the car I had bought for her. When the file ended, silence pressed in like a suffocating blanket. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of betrayal crushing me into the mattress. My fists clenched, not with rage, but with the certainty that the path forward had shifted. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. This was about strategy. The truth was mine now, but it wasn't enough just to know it. I needed to wield it. And as I drifted into a restless sleep, one thought seared through the haze. Caroline had no idea that her lies had already begun to collapse. That single message seared itself into my mind. Can't wait for this weekend. He'll never know. I stared at the screen until the words seemed to blur, the letters crawling like insects across glass. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. She wasn't just seeing him occasionally. She was planning something deliberate, something that required lies crafted in advance. The weekend. What did she mean? A trip? An overnight stay? My mind conjured images that made my chest tighten. A hotel bed, champagne glasses, her laughter in someone else's ear. I forced myself to breathe slowly, evenly, the way I used to when delivering high-stakes presentations at work. You cannot think clearly if you let panic drive you. Evidence first. Confrontation later. I scrolled further, messages stretching back weeks. Most were coy, half-sentences, coded phrases that only made sense if you already knew the context. I loved last night. You make me feel alive. I'll bring the red one. The red one. Lingerie? A dress? My stomach turned as I remembered the camera footage of her tucking delicate lace into a drawer. What hit hardest wasn't even the words themselves, but the tone. I knew Caroline's rhythms, her expressions. She had written those lines with care, with warmth, with excitement. She hadn't written me like that in years. That evening, I watched her cook dinner, humming softly. The same woman who still kissed the kids goodnight with tenderness, who asked me about my day as though nothing were wrong. How could someone compartmentalize so cleanly? How could she lie so effortlessly while flipping pasta in a pan? Every smile felt rehearsed, every casual touch rehearsed. The more I looked, the more I saw the mask. By Thursday night, the pieces of her plan began to reveal themselves. Caroline told me she'd signed up for a special weekend workshop at the gym, 2 full days of intensive training with guest instructors. She delivered the lie smoothly, her eyes bright, her voice almost giddy. "I'll be gone Saturday morning until late Sunday," she said, casually rinsing a glass. "They've rented out a retreat center just outside town. It's supposed to be amazing." I nodded, feigning interest, though my insides burned. So this was it. The weekend. When she kissed me goodnight, her lips warm against mine, I tasted betrayal so bitter it almost choked me. Friday was agony. Every hour stretched taut, my mind consumed with what awaited me. I could hardly sit through meetings, could barely answer emails. My body was present, but my thoughts were miles away, plotting. That evening, as she packed her bag, I lingered in the doorway of our bedroom, pretending to scroll through my phone. She folded leggings, workout tops, a pair of running shoes. All the props for her alibi. But I noticed how carefully she zipped a smaller pouch inside the bag. The sound of the zipper was soft, almost reverent. I knew what was inside. Perfume. Lingerie. Lies. "Don't forget to text me when you get there," I said, keeping my voice even. "Of course," she replied, smiling without hesitation. When she left Saturday morning, the kids and I stood in the driveway waving. She blew kisses, her car pulling away into the gray dawn. The image should have been ordinary, just a mother heading to a retreat. But all I saw was a performance, staged for my benefit, crafted to keep me in the dark. The moment she disappeared around the corner, I sprang into motion. I dropped the kids at my parents' house, inventing a story about needing to catch up on work. My father clapped me on the shoulder, none the wiser, while my mother fussed over the children with delight. Guilt pinched me. I hated involving them in this, even unknowingly, but I had no choice. Then I drove. The tracker showed her moving west, past the city limits, along a rural highway. I tailed at a safe distance, adrenaline surging with every mile. She didn't turn toward any retreat center. She didn't stop at any gym. She kept driving until she pulled off onto a quiet road lined with trees. At the end of that road sat a small bed and breakfast, its rustic sign swinging gently in the breeze. I parked far enough back to stay hidden, my chest tight as I watched her car glide into the gravel lot. A few minutes later, another car appeared. A black SUV. He stepped out, David Reynolds, dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, as though this were just another weekend getaway with a lover. Caroline rushed into his arms before they even reached the door. Their kiss was long, lingering, unashamed. Then, hand in hand, they disappeared inside. I sat frozen, staring at the inn as though it were a crime scene. In a way it was. This was the grave of my marriage, the place where vows meant nothing, where my trust lay buried. But even as grief clawed at me, another feeling rose, cold, deliberate resolve. I couldn't stop what she was doing. Not yet. But I could record it, capture it, preserve it. Proof. I drove into town and bought a cheap camera with a long lens. Returning to the inn, I positioned myself on a hill across from the property, half hidden by trees. Through the lens, I watched their shadows move across curtains, saw them step onto the balcony with wineglasses in hand, laughing, leaning into one another as though the world belonged only to them. Each click of the shutter felt like a nail in the coffin of our life together. Night fell. The inn glowed warmly against the darkness, their silhouettes merging behind gauzy drapes. I imagined the sound of her laughter muffled against pillows, the intimacy once reserved for me, now given freely to him. By the time I returned home, it was nearly midnight. I collapsed into my chair, staring at the photographs on my camera. Caroline in David's arms. Their kiss. Their balcony. Undeniable. Sleep came fitfully, my dreams fractured by images of her betrayal. Sunday passed like a blur. I checked the tracker obsessively, watching the dot remain at the inn until late afternoon. Then it moved, east, back toward town, back toward me. By evening, she returned home, smiling, radiant. She kissed the kids, kissed me, spun a story about exhausting workouts and new techniques she'd learned. I nodded, pretending to believe. But I knew the truth, and the photographs burned in my pocket like embers. That night, as she showered, I slipped into the study and spread the pictures across my desk. Each image told the story she would never admit. Each frame was a dagger aimed straight at her lies. The question wasn't whether she was unfaithful. That was proven beyond doubt. The question was, what would I do with the truth? I could confront her, rage, demand answers she'd never give. But something deeper urged me to wait, to plan, to strike when she least expected it, when the impact would be devastating, irreversible. And as I gathered the photographs back into an envelope, a new thought crystallized, a plan that chilled and exhilarated me all at once. I wouldn't just expose her. I would dismantle her world, piece by piece, until she had nothing left but regret. Next time, let's use his house. Those 6 words struck harder than the photographs, harder than the lies she'd rehearsed with a smile. My house. Our house. The place where I had built a life, raised children, carved memories into walls and floors. That was where they wanted to carry out their affair next. For the first time since this started, I felt something deeper than rage. It was violation. The idea of another man touching her in our bed, laughing in our kitchen, walking through the hallways where my children played. That was unbearable. I shut the phone, my jaw clenched until it ached. If they wanted to use my house, then maybe that was exactly what I needed. An opportunity, a stage for the truth. The days leading up to it were torture. Caroline carried on as though nothing had changed. She kissed me good morning, packed lunches for the kids, went off to work with the same carefully curated smile. At night, she curled against me, her breathing steady, her lies wrapped in warmth. But I knew the weekend wasn't enough for them. I knew they had chosen the one place they thought was safe. And I would be waiting. I began preparing. Cameras repositioned, lenses angled directly at the bed, the living room couch, the kitchen. I tested the voice recorders, ensuring they would catch even the softest whisper. I even installed a hidden camera in the vent of our bedroom, angled perfectly toward the mattress. It felt clinical, methodical. I wasn't just a betrayed husband anymore. I was an investigator building a case. And with every adjustment, every battery check, I whispered a silent promise. You won't destroy me quietly. If you choose to shatter our marriage, I'll make sure the world sees exactly how it happened. On Thursday evening, Caroline mentioned casually that she'd be staying late at the gym the next night. My pulse quickened, though I kept my face neutral. Don't wait up, she said, slipping on her jacket. I nodded. Of course. Be safe. Friday came. I pretended to go to dinner with a coworker, kissed her goodbye at 6, and drove a block away before looping back. I parked far enough not to be seen, but close enough to keep an eye on the driveway. Her car sat there for nearly an hour. Then headlights swept across the lawn. David Reynolds' black SUV rolled up to the curb. The front door opened. Caroline stepped outside, glancing around once, then waved him in. My stomach lurched, but my hands were steady as I gripped the camera. I zoomed in, the lens capturing David crossing my threshold. My threshold. For the next 3 hours, I sat in the dark car, teeth grinding, eyes glued to the glow of my phone as the cameras fed images to my screen. They wasted no time. Clothes discarded in the hallway, laughter echoing in rooms where my children had once built forts out of pillows. I watched Caroline lead him upstairs, watched them collapse onto the bed I had bought for us, watched her arch, laugh, whisper things I could barely stand to hear. Each second scorched me, but I forced myself to keep watching, because every frame, every sound, was another nail in the coffin of her lies. By midnight, David left. Caroline lingered downstairs for a while, straightening the cushions, folding a throw blanket as though tidying up could erase the stench of betrayal. Then she slipped into the shower. By the time I returned home, she was in bed, pretending to sleep. I lay beside her, my heart hammering, the footage still fresh in my mind. The urge to scream, to shake her awake, nearly consumed me. But I didn't. Not yet, because now I had everything. The next morning, I retrieved the recordings. My laptop became a vault of evidence, videos, audio files, photographs. Proof so damning even Caroline couldn't spin a story around it. But proof alone wasn't enough. I wanted her exposed. For days, I debated how best to deliver the truth. To her family? To our friends? To David's business partners? Each option simmered in my brain, each more tempting than the last. But I knew timing was everything. Strike too soon, and she'd scramble to recover. Wait too long, and the fury inside me might eat me alive. Then opportunity arrived on its own. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table with the kids, Caroline mentioned an upcoming family gathering. Her parents' anniversary celebration, extended family, cousins, old friends. Everyone in one place. I looked up from my plate, my mind already racing. A family event. A room full of people who adored her, who saw her as the perfect wife and daughter. What better place to reveal the truth? That night, as Caroline slept soundly, I stared at the ceiling, a plan forming so vividly it almost frightened me. I would let her walk into that room glowing with pride, ready to play the devoted wife. And then, in front of them all, I would dismantle her facade. The photos, the recordings, the proof. Every secret she thought she kept hidden. Not just confrontation, spectacle. The thought calmed me in a way nothing else had. In the days that followed, I prepared like a man gearing up for war. I edited the footage, stitching together the most damning moments. Caroline's laugh as she whispered to David in our bed. Their kiss in the living room. Her voice on the recorder, promising him more. Every clip was short, precise, undeniable. I loaded them onto a flash drive and slipped it into my pocket, the weight both terrifying and exhilarating. The night before the anniversary party, Caroline kissed me goodnight and whispered, "I love you." I stared at her in the darkness, wondering how many times she had spoken those same words to him. My reply caught in my throat, and I let silence answer for me. She didn't notice. She never did. When morning came, I dressed carefully, my tie knotted, my jacket pressed. Caroline twirled in her dress, smiling at me. "Do I look all right?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Perfect." As we drove to her parents' house, the flash drive burned in my pocket like a live coal. My pulse thrummed louder with each mile. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to bury her lies under the weight of truth, in front of everyone she thought she could deceive. The weight of the flash drive in my pocket felt like a stone tethering me to the ground. Around me, the chatter of Caroline's family swirled with warmth and joy, her father's booming laughter, her mother's affectionate fussing over the grandchildren, cousins trading stories across the long dining table. To them, this was a celebration. To me, it was a battlefield. Caroline sat beside me, radiant in a navy dress, her hand occasionally brushing my arm. She looked every bit the devoted wife, the cherished daughter, the proud mother. And no one here suspected otherwise. No one but me. Her parents stood at the head of the room, glasses raised, offering thanks for 50 years together. 50 years of loyalty, endurance, faith. Words that struck like knives, because at our table, loyalty had been replaced with deceit. I cleared my throat, standing slowly. My chair scraped back against the wooden floor, drawing every eye toward me. Caroline's hand lingered on my wrist. "What are you doing?" she whispered, smiling nervously at the curious faces now watching us. "Something I should have done weeks ago," I replied softly, so only she could hear. I stepped forward, pulling the flash drive from my pocket. The small device seemed to gleam beneath the chandelier's light. "I'd like to say a few words," I announced, my voice steady despite the thunder in my chest. Caroline's parents nodded graciously. "Of course, dear. Go right ahead." I walked to the front of the room, every step echoing in the silence. Guests set down their forks, eyes fixed on me. Caroline remained at the table, her smile stiffening, suspicion flickering in her gaze. I reached the television set up for a planned slideshow of family photos. Instead, I inserted my flash drive. My heart pounded as the screen flickered, then lit up with the first image. Caroline, in David Reynolds' arms. Gasps rippled through the room. A cousin's hand flew to her mouth. Her mother dropped her napkin, face draining of color. Caroline shot to her feet. "Stop this," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Turn it off." But I didn't stop. The next image appeared, Caroline kissing him on a balcony, wineglass in hand. Then the footage rolled, grainy but clear enough. Her laughter, her voice, her body entwined with his on the bed we shared. Whispers erupted, followed by stunned silence. Her father's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as if he couldn't decide between disbelief and fury. Caroline stumbled forward, her face pale, her hands shaking. "This isn't what it looks like," she cried, desperation cracking her voice. I turned toward her, the room still watching. "Then please, Caroline," I said, calm and deliberate, "tell your parents. Tell our children. Tell everyone here, what does it look like?" Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came. The footage played on, her betrayal undeniable. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of truth crush her carefully built facade. Finally, I ejected the flash drive and held it up for all to see. "For months," I said, voice steady, "my wife told me she was at the gym. Instead, she was with him. In hotels. In our home. While I cared for our children, she was building a second life. This," I gestured to the screen, "is the truth she didn't want you to see." Her father stood slowly, his face red, his voice like gravel. "Caroline, is this true?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. She looked from her father to me, then back again. I never meant for it to." But he cut her off, his voice sharp. "Yes or no?" Her silence was her answer. The room erupted. Family members muttered, some shaking their heads, others glaring at her. Caroline's mother clutched at her husband's arm, whispering frantically. The children, too young to understand fully, watched with wide, frightened eyes. I felt a pang of guilt then, sharp as glass. But I reminded myself, the blame lay with her, not with me. She chose the lies. She chose the affair. Caroline turned toward me, her face crumpled. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not like this. We can fix this." I looked at her, the woman I had once loved without question, the mother of my children, now stripped bare by her own betrayal. My chest ached, but my voice came out cold. "No," I said. "You broke it. And now everyone sees what you've done." I left her standing there, surrounded by the fragments of her own lies. The weeks that followed were chaos. Divorce papers were filed, custody agreements drafted. Caroline moved into a small apartment across town, her once perfect reputation fractured beyond repair. Friends she once charmed avoided her now. Her parents spoke to her only in clipped tones, their disappointment a weight she couldn't escape. David Reynolds vanished from her life almost immediately. Whether out of shame or convenience, he disappeared like smoke. Caroline was left alone to face the fallout. As for me, I focused on the children, shielding them from the storm, anchoring them in routine and reassurance. At night, when the house grew quiet, I sat in the study, staring at the empty spaces where her laughter used to echo. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Betrayal carves deep, and some wounds never fully close. But each day I reminded myself that I hadn't been the one to lie. I hadn't been the one to destroy. Caroline had claimed the gym was for her health. But the truth was, it had been the death of our marriage. And though I sometimes wondered what life might have been if she had chosen differently, I carried with me one unshakable certainty. I had faced the truth, revealed it, and walked away stronger. She had gambled everything on secrecy, and in the end, secrecy was what ruined her.